Do you know what the 24th Amendment is?
The 24th, abolishing slavery.
No.
Is
Yeah.
what is it?
No.
No.
No clue.
No.
It's like poll taxes.
Whoa, let's have MC break it down for us.
These are your rights, rights, baby. These are your rights, rights, baby. Alright, stop. Let me tell you about poll tax. These polls were aimed at the blacks. The 24th Amendment's what we have now. It makes everyone say, wow. Southern states looked for a loophole to discourage African voting and people who lack wealth, which therefore started poll taxes. Made these people brokenhearted. Now, we have rights to not pay poll taxes. Put up a fight. No more fees to be paid. This was the point the 24th Amendment made. These rights, rights, baby. These are your rights, rights, baby. These are your rights, rights, baby. These are your rights, rights, baby. Hit it, John.
We've done it before in our nation's history, 27 times before, and we've done it to overturn egregious Supreme Court rulings. The poll tax, as we may remember, was something that existed in this country for decades, a fee charged to voters in order to vote. 1937, it went up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court upheld the poll tax on the grounds that it was okay to charge fees to voters to ferret out those frivolous voters. Surely if you were a serious voter, you could pay the poll tax. 1951, a second case got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled again that the poll tax was constitutional. And it was only in 1966 that the court finally overturned the poll tax and ruled the right way. But in the interim, there was the 24th Amendment to the Constitution that had been passed by Congress, enacted into the Constitution via ratification at the state level. And that amendment, the 24th Amendment, banned poll taxes in federal elections. And this ruling that came 2 years later finally banned poll taxes altogether in state elections as well. So that's a story of how we, the people, have used the constitutional amendment process to correct an egregious ruling, in that case, two rulings of the Supreme Court, and we must do it again here.
You're up, Dawn.
To vote, but of course, many of the states continued to bar blacks from voting because of their use of things like the grandfather clause and poll taxes to either one way or another, literacy tests were another way in which you could try to prevent people from voting. And as a result, the overwhelming majority of blacks in the South really could not vote until the 1965 Voting Rights Act was passed. Poll taxes, by the way, was a requirement that actually worked against poor white people as well as poor black people, meaning you had to pay to be able to vote. And eventually, in 1964, the 24th Amendment to the Constitution outlawed the poll tax. At the time it did, Virginia was one of the 5 states that still had poll taxes, and the state legislature then passed a law saying, okay, in federal elections there's no poll tax, but there is going to be a poll tax in state elections. But the Supreme Court struck this down as well, and that in disputes, the Constitution trumps state law.
In the aftermath of the political upheaval of populism, which is a social movement of Southern and Western farm workers, in the late 1890s, the poll tax also became a device used by the Southern political elite to decrease the influence of poor whites on Southern politics. By 1908, all of the Southern states had enacted a poll tax. Just one of the methods used to prevent African Americans from reaching the polls, it was not considered to be in violation of the 15th Amendment because it did not directly use race as a condition to pay the poll tax. The poll taxes themselves were at one point ruled not to be unconstitutional in the Breedlove v. Suttles case because it did not violate the provisions set forth by either the 14th Amendment or the 15th Amendment. However, it is the Breedlove case that managed to raise awareness of the unfairness of poll taxes and created the movement for a constitutional amendment banning them in 1939. However, it would be the Smith versus Allwright case that would make a more definitive move toward the banning of the poll tax.